So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Feed Your Mind webinar, the HR Challenges of Managing an Ageing Workforce. It's certainly a hot topic across all industries at the moment, with a large percentage of the population in that age category and still in the workforce. So I hope you find some value in today's presentation. My name's Mel. I'm the General Manager for Career Life Transitions. Just before Peter commences with the presentation, I just wanted to run through some housekeeping with you. If you can please keep your videos off and microphones muted during the presentation. And if you have any questions throughout, please type them in the chat box and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. So now I'll pass you over to Peter James, our Director of Career Life Transitions.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. It's another beautiful day in paradise. I hope you're all keeping safe and well. Okay, we're going to be talking about the challenges of managing the ageing workforce at the moment, which is, as Mel has already said, is quite a hot topic. I don't think I turn on my computer and see the news without something coming up about it. But I also wonder how many organisations and what have you are actually taking any of that information seriously, because a lot of the ramifications of this are far-reaching and outside of the immediacy of the issues we're currently facing in terms of COVID and the economy. It will have long-term effects both on the individuals and the organisations. And I think smart organisations are making it a part of their agenda at the moment rather than just delaying that. So we've got a fairly packed set of slides here for you. I guess my attempt really, by throwing all this information at you, which you can review later on because we'll be providing you with a copy of the slides, is to give you as much information as possible. So I'm going to be flicking through them reasonably quickly. We've got about 35 minutes, 45 minutes thereabouts of the presentation. Please, if you have any questions or anything moving through, just flick them on chat and Mel will manage that as we go through. But bearing in mind, it is quite a complex and almost a wicked problem. We really can provide you with some approaches at a high level, but if you have any, I guess, specific challenges or anything that in your workplace or want to take these things any deeper, then we really encourage you to reach out and organise a meeting with us, and we can come out and have a look at your unique situation and flow the solutions down to the next level. Okay. So this is really a strategic approach to managing an ageing workforce. We have an ageing workforce, and I guess what the issues start to be is that we can't turn our backs on that, not for the economy, not for our community, not for our work practices. So here's some questions that you might want to think about in your own workplace. And it's quite surprising when we go out and visit organisations how few of these questions people can actually answer. Do you know what percentage of your workforce is over 50? Do you know what the retirement plans for those people are? And do you have systems and processes in place to manage health and safety of older workers, your brand management strategy for exiting workers, resource planning, knowledge retention, succession planning? Now, I guess we kind of are just wandering along at the moment, and it's not, as I said, really in your face in terms of the challenges that businesses are facing at the moment. But if you don't know the answer to these questions, then your business may be at risk. And when you're in that risk situation, then it's not going to get better without a lot more effort. My view on things is always, if you can address these things early, that's going to cost you an awful lot less than addressing them later on. And that goes for any kind of change management or transition. So this is an interesting stat. In 2016, the world's advanced economies reached a critical milestone. In other words, the combined working age population now is less than the population over 65 years old. You might think, oh, well, that's a kind of an interesting stat. But the question being is, how do we, as a community, support people over 65 years old? When you have a combined working age population, in other words, people earning that income, paying taxes and what have you, which is, I guess, a percentage of it, and let's face it, Social Security and social finances is probably the biggest expenditure in an Australian government. How do we maintain that balance? So we are getting older. In 1970, 7.5 was the working age employees for each person of 65. In 2050, it's 2.7 working age employees for every person over 65. So we do have an aging population, but what we're also doing is, well, what that bubble is going through of the baby boomers and what have you, that is now, I guess, creating a situation where you've got a large number of people who need to be supported, who need to have an income, who need to be meaningfully employed, looked after, healthcare, aged care, all those kind of things. And with, I guess, a working, which you can equate to a productivity component of the workforce, how is that balancing out? Now, I guess when we look at, I guess, Australia once again, in 1930, the life expectancy was 63 years, so it wasn't really an issue in terms of retirement. In 1970, it was 71 years, so we're not talking that long ago, 50 years ago. Which means that, okay, we needed to support people 6 years beyond retirement. 2019, that's now up to 84 years, which is 19 years beyond retirement. And I think we all have our elderly relatives and friends that are into their 90s already, which I certainly, these days moving forward, I mean, I'm 60 at the moment, I'm expecting I'm going to live till I'm 90. So if you think about that in terms of how long was I out of work before I started work, well, let's say I started full-time work after college in my early 20s, that's 20 years. Now we're talking about if I retire at 65, that could be another 25, 30 years. What am I going to do in that period of time? While I'm growing, I'm going to school and learning and contributing. At the end of that, what does someone do in those last 30 years if they decide to retire at 65? Now, the retirement age is continually moving, and at the moment it's up at about 67, with this recognition that the economy can no longer support. I mean, there was if you go back and have a look at the history of pensions and what have you, they're usually around returning soldiers and World War I and what have you, where we move forward with this expectation that the government will set aside a nest egg that will look after us as we get older. But we're talking about these things having been developed in the 1930s. So you go back there in 20s and 30s, where pretty much not that many people were actually making it into retirement where they would need to be looked after. That's completely changed now. So you have an economy that is now a shrinking economy in terms of age, I guess, in comparison to over 65, trying to support a group of people that are living longer and longer. So, I mean, it just is endless. I mean, when we put this slide pack together, we had a picture in here that was from a couple of days ago and already today. Older workers face unemployment crisis exacerbated by job maker, experts warn. So basically, it's the same story where older workers, Australians feel older Australians feel like they're certainly not looked upon favourably in terms of applying for a job. So you can see that there is this continual fear and uncertainty going forward. Everything that seems to come from the media is quite negative, and I'm not quite sure where that cultural shift occurs, but we certainly see ourselves as a young nation, and then that's reflected in some of our attitudes towards an older workforce. So we understand there are biological effects of aging, and you don't need to be a doctor to see your elderly parents or elderly members of the community start to their muscular strength, loss of balance, vision, cognitive decline, obesity, hearing loss, things like that. But I mean, you really are going through 3 stages when you are looking at that retirement. I guess the first stage is that active retirement. And that is really where I'm fully functional, fully operational. I'm just moving into that age bracket. Now, where that starts to switch is going to be completely different for different people. I mean, I have friends of mine that are well into their 70s who can get on a bike and ride 120 Ks and it doesn't worry them at all. And I know other people that are in their 60s who are almost completely incapacitated. So we never quite know what that is. But I guess with health care and what have you, that active retirement age is starting to extend. but that's where the fear kicks in. I guess the next stage is where you're going to almost like a non-active retirement phase, so a sedative stage where you're no longer rushing around and doing the traveling, the blue rinse set, as they used to call them, up to Broome and things like that. Now you're active and fully functional, but once again, you're not so active out in the community, out in the workforce. And I guess the last stage of that is going through an incapacitation stage where, all right, now you're needing full health care. Now, that is, I guess, how that flows through, but it doesn't automatically mean that, some people jump from fully healthy to completely incapacitated, depending what it is. So I guess it's a very, very complex, and I guess boxing anybody into one area or another is where we can start to make some really serious errors of judgment, and where things can, derail it a little bit. Because just because someone's over 65 does not mean that they're in massive decline, especially these days. So it is a unique life stage there. So it's unique. It's about endings for some people, and that's endings in one stage of your life. As you had an ending to a stage of life of school and went into work, it's just a stage we're going through. We need some strategic approaches to this issue, and it's important that we start the conversation. And there are some things that are important to people on this stage as you go through. I mean, it's not for everybody. People have different views on it, but generally speaking, as I move into retirement, yes, I want to spend more kids time with the grandkids. I want to spend more time doing the things I want to do. Not really, constantly worried about what I'm going to do and where the income comes for that. So, as I say, the issues are complex for the employers. We're at that stage, and the HR laws changed, and so there's a lot of anti-discrimination laws and what have you. So, employers need to be quite careful about what they talk to about to employees. And if you think back, certainly when my father retired, it was just pretty much understood right across the community that you're going to get to 65, you get your gold watch and what have you, and a little retirement party, and you moved on from there. And there was no arguing about that. And so as people got to 65, HR knew exactly who was in the organization, what their ages were, and they were buying the watches and getting ready for that, and new workers were starting to flow through. But there's a whole lot of things you can't do these days that you could do previously. So you can't raise a subject of retirement with an older worker. You don't want to be seen as discriminatory by that, especially if you start to engage or have a union shop and things like that. They're very conscious of those type of things and those type of conversations. We don't actually understand if we do or don't have an issue with retirement, because as I said to you, you could have a group of employees that are fit and healthy and completely engaged in the business right up into their 75, or you may have an industry which is quite taxing mentally or physically, where your the average age and their capacity to do that job is probably restricted because of the nature of the work. It's a minefield for employees and possible industrial strife and industrial action. There are massive safety issues involved in this, and younger managers, they get in that stage where they don't quite know how to talk to older employees. So they're the issues the employers are facing. What the employees are thinking is quite complex as well. People think, well, I got caught out in the GFC, or I'm caught out with COVID, or the multiple economic issues that are floating through there. I remember, it wasn't that long ago where if you're in real estate, you talk to any real estate agent and they will say no one has ever lost money in real estate in Australia. Now, I'm trying to think, maybe that was 20 years ago, but certainly that is not the case now. That is a very volatile market. People are concerned. Do I have enough money? What is enough money to retire? I could live another 30 years. I'm not ready to retire. Things have changed so fast, locally, globally. What can I do? Who do I turn to for really solid advice? It seems to be everyone I speak to, beat up by the media, that is after my money and not after myself. Looking after me. I don't really understand what retirement means. What would I do? People talk about, well, I want to take up golf. Okay, well, that's probably 4 hours a week. What are you going to do the rest of the time? People don't understand super. They don't understand it's changing. Every 3 months, the super's changing. They don't understand their entitlements under Centrelink. And I mean, let's face it, the government make it challenging and interesting to apply for those benefits. And most people give up, or they just don't think. They've made some assumptions about their eligibility for it, which just aren't valid anymore. I mean, there's a whole list of things that I could talk to you about now in terms of Centrelink, which just aren't true, but they start to become urban myths, but they change it all the time. So the end result is the employees now see, I need to look after myself. So this leads to, how do I deal with the issues from the HR department? And for the retiree, how do I stay in control? And the best way to do that, what we've found as organizations, is let's say nothing. We'll just keep that silence. So we are running retirement, a transition to retirement, transition to a next stage in life on a regular basis. And here's some of the feedback we're getting from people. Participants are reluctant to talk to HR about their retirement plans, as they fear the retirement process may be taken out of their control. People feel guilty about holding on to jobs in the 70s as stopping young people moving in organizations, but they feel they have no other choice. They're concerned about mental and physical issues and what have you, and looking at the workplace saying, what are some of the things? I mean, we have a social club and we have the gyms and what have you, and that's great for the young people coming through, but what is the business, or how can the businesses support us mentally and physically as we get a little bit older? And people are considering taking that break from work, i.e. you may have a workforce, an older workforce that are in senior roles who would love to take some long service leave or get a sense of what retirement may look like, or take a break from work. That should say break from work, not break from work. And certainly we're noticing that with COVID, where people are working from home, a lot of the older workforce that we're working with are coming back and say, actually, I really enjoyed that. I can see that there's some life after work. Because you can remember, I mean, someone's worked for one organization for 30, 40 years. I mean, we're dealing with people who have worked for the one organization for up to 50 years. That is a habit that's going to be very hard to break. That is almost a lifestyle for you. So there is some major business risks and drivers. I mean, you do lose talent. You need to be managing talent to knowledge retention. There is certainly a health and safety risk involved with the work of the older workforce, and how you interact and manage the older workforce moving through will reflect and can possibly damage your brand. I guess with everything that's out there at the moment, with the amount of information I can get, which either pushed or pulled, whatever way you want, I can find out about how a business interacts with its employees. I mean, I get like you, and they're doing HR, you're getting updates all the time, and you see the companies are coming through about being taken to court, this or that. Or I get on a site like Glassdoor and I can read the reviews of people who have left that organization. So it's very, very difficult to attract really good people if they can take three seconds to go on and actually see how you treat your employees arriving and leaving. So who wants what? So the employees want a strategy to manage resources. It's about continuity of the service or that product. It's about a safe working environment, and that's maintaining a strong brand. That's what the employer wants. The employees, they're just really looking for fairness and equity. They're looking for choices, and they're looking for life stage planning. As we planned to develop people in the organization, you have a lot of organizations have that stepping stone where now, you want to move to supervisor, we'll provide you with this support. You want to move to a manager, we'll provide you with this support. It doesn't happen back the other way. It almost is, well, all right, you're in that role now. We just hope you retire before you injure yourself. And for the managers and supervisors, and these are people that are actually now interacting and looking at the older workforce, they want information about what they can and can't do and what's actually occurring out there. They want support for that. They want some decisions and directions from the organization, and they're looking for accountability within the business for looking after that aging workforce. So, I mean, really, people, there can be quite a large stage where people are in what I would call active retirement. So in other words, they have the capacity to retire, let's say at 67. For another 10 years, they may be very, very active. But you talk about even people 55 to 75. Okay, yes, you could say they're able to move into their retirement area, but I guess turning your back on them because you have a fear that it is they are suffering some illnesses or disabilities and what have you that you would associate with older age is a misnomer. People can be operating right into their 70s and 80s quite functionally and effectively. I guess there are some positive aspects of vulnerable workforce. They tend to be more loyal, more reliable, more dependable with the experience. They bring a level of conscientiousness to the role. They're very good at timekeeping, fewer mistakes. These are the things that I guess are positives that we're hearing about an older workforce and people who are taking the time to engage in that. And we have a lot of perceptions that just do not hold water about an older workforce. For us, the way we go about talking to organisations through that mature workforce is really looking for that stakeholder buy-in. And I mean, if you are in HR and this is one of the areas that you're charged with looking after, these are the kind of steps that you should be looking towards to I guess, transition your older workforce, that you look for that stakeholder buy-in. If management is not interested in it, it's not going to go any further. And we've certainly talked to organisations where the older workforce, even though there are some major health issues, even though they're looking almost at a cliff, if you like, of a large number of their workforce about to retire. And people, if you don't know when they're going to retire, a lot of organisations are quite surprised when that happens. What are the true analytics of it? I mean, there is a fantastic business case for this, and we'll look about that a little bit later on. We run, or you can run, employee workshops to start having that conversation with the employees, the older employees, to see where they're at, what their expectations are, and what they are looking for in the workplace. And then putting some business plans in place, and that can be everything from succession planning to scenario planning, setting priorities, policy refinements, and what have you, and then actually tailoring those interventions based on the information you have gained in the workforce to ensure that you're building an organisation that looks after, transitions, supports the older workforce moving through. So we work through the transition planning model. We look at financial considerations, life after work and transition. And as I say, you can read that for yourself as we go through. But the focus needs to be on moving demographics, and older workforce is here to stay. As I said to you, we are getting, if our production increases significantly and the number of young people moving into the workforce is reducing, and the number of older workers still capable of working to their health is increasing. I mean, you don't have to be a genius to figure out that your workforce by default is going to get older. You can't avoid that. Otherwise, you just won't have the people to do the work. So you're going to be running out of young people, and you're going to be looking for an older workforce to support the continuation of your business, depending on what the business is. So for the employer, what's in it for you? Well, that's resolved a pivotal mission, and what's in it for you in terms of paying attention to the older workforce. Resolve a pivotal, mission critical issue. It is coming. Focusing on a higher performance, practical skills, transfer knowledge, retaining good solid performers, exiting people with dignity and respect while valuing their contribution, ensuring an across the board fit for work workforce, framework for the business to move forward on, and flexibility in structuring. So there are a lot of benefits to organisation to pay attention to this. But more than that, if we go down and now start to have a look at some of the very, very hard statistics that are coming in, workers' compensation, mental health claims average 17 weeks of lost time and a median total of 27,700 for serious claims, compared to 10,700 for serious physical injury claims. So mental health claims are on the rise, and mental health claims are related to stress, to age, and things like that. Now, I'm not going to read all this way through, but I guess to provide some context, there's 8 times more time off work from mental health issues than primary physical injury claims. And we're talking about a recent report on the return on investment for employees, so that the right intervention could save Australian businesses $4.5 billion annually. a return on investment ranging from $1.30 to $4.70 for psychological conditions and their return to work programs. So in other words, what that's saying is that mental health issues and what have you are on the boom. They're enormously more expensive when people go out for mental health issues. They're on extended leave, and it is in costing the organisation, or costing Australian business billions and billions of dollars. I guess why I'm raising it through here is this sits in part in the aging workforce, and paying attention to that is creating an environment where you're reducing those costs, because you start to think, if your business is involved in this, the other side of it is your workers' compensation. Okay, so we are focusing on mature age work. There's a number of options that may lead to separation from the company. So obviously the best is voluntary separation, where someone says, okay, I'm at that age now, I'm due to retire. I guess once you then move down from that voluntary separation to involuntary separation or a work-related injury claim, you are starting to massively increase the cost to your business. So with 60% of mature age workers coming to work with a chronic condition, there is a risk they will make a workers' compensation claim. And I guess that trying to manage that and paying attention to your workforce and where they're at, because I mean, if someone has a fear of losing their job, they have a fear of the future, they have a fear of how the company will treat them through this, they're likely to hide from you some of those conditions and some of those situations, and it's extremely stressful for people. So for the employee, what does all this mean? It's an ability to retain the status quo as appropriate. So if I want to keep working, I can keep working. I may have access to alternate work arrangements, which will suit me. Maybe I want to hand over my job. I'm a senior manager. I met a fellow the other day, 72 years old. He feels guilty about holding someone out of a job. He would like to retire, but he's extremely agile, extremely active, extremely fit. 72 years old. He would like to work differently, but he's in a senior management position. He just can't see how the business is going to work with him to make that happen. But when he leaves, he was saying, I think 40% of the team that were working for him were also over 60 years old, at which stage they could retire at any point as well. You're talking about a business that has long-term employees, and financial considerations weren't there. So a lot of them did have the capacity financially to retire at any time. So you're really creating a perfect storm there, which can be damaging for the business. You can organise for job shifts, the ability to add back via coaching and mentoring that employees can gracefully and exit with dignity, that there's a recognition of their contribution, and there's different options moving forward for them to look at. So this is, once again, data from some of the programs that we've been running. The key priorities for people we're talking to is that reduction, flexibility of working hours and working from home, that retirement planning and financial education support is available. I mean, a lot of people we met, they use the financial considerations for not retiring, but when you do scratch the surface a little bit, it actually doesn't hold water. Financial considerations are an enabler, but what the biggest fear for people moving into retirement is, what will I do when I retire? Will they have access to long-term other paid entitlements on a regular and systematic basis as they're moving through? So our key findings, over 90% of participants express they would like to retire prior to the end of 2022 in this organisation. Now that's when you're talking about an organisation that has large numbers of people over 50 or over 55, what is the succession planning? What is HR doing to ensure that doesn't have a negative impact on the business? Majority of people we talk to have no thoughts or even vague ideas as to what retirement means or what they will do after that, other than financial. It seems to we're bombarded by information about finances. Do you have enough? What have you? But I mean, the reality of it is, for some people, that's not an issue. It's what they're actually going to do. And participants who would like to be more involved in succession planning to pass on their knowledge. If you work in an organisation for 30, 40, 50 years, you would like to think that where you contributed added value, and the organisation also acknowledge and recognise your contribution by asking you to share that information with others. If you work for a company for 30 years, leave out and nothing happened as a result of that, some people are left wondering what their contribution really meant. Did they spend their life adding value? So once again, some workshop themes. It's interesting, I'm not going to go through all these, but talking with a group of groups of people in that retirement fair, the questions that we are asked, they're 70% life questions, 30% financial. Whereas, as I say, if you read the media and listen to what people are putting up front as their initial reaction, you would think the reverse is true. Now, this is some interesting statistics that we just came across, came up the other day actually on LinkedIn. This is people's reason for finding a post-career job. And it's quite interesting that the largest group of people change their mind after retiring. And what that really means to me is what they're saying is that it wasn't that they changed their mind. They kind of retired and thought, oh, I'm bored out of my mind. What am I going to do now? So they go back and start to look in. So I mean, you can see, I guess what the percentage of movement is. I'm not quite sure what others is, but anyway. So the recurring themes: businesses that get on front foot are better prepared. Having a mature age approach embedded in the strategic and business plans puts them on a good standing. Engaging third-party support takes away the fear and concerns of both parties, because, as I say, at the moment, you may have a business where the two groups are refusing to talk, don't want to talk, they're scared to talk to each other. Being open to different ways of working actually creates great opportunities for your business. I guess approaching this, getting on the front foot, actually creates opportunities for it. It doesn't close those down. Involving senior leadership is absolutely essential. Listening to your mature age workforce is essential as well. Going about developing a systematic model to support ongoing analysis of that as well. So you really are building for HR, and a lot of HR people don't have the budgets and what have you to do these activities over and above their day-to-day, because it is almost a project that building a return on investment, which is not hard to do, is going to support your argument to address this area. So bringing it to senior management. Integrated approaches with other functions, creating policies and practices to cater for aging, looking for an approach through a well-being lens, and support and encouraging internal champions of the aging workforce. These are some of the recurring themes that are coming up for us. So the question for you is, what are your priorities and what will you do next? Because, as I say, it is a societal issue. It's not a business issue, and thinking it won't happen to me, or won't happen to us, won't happen to our business is a head in the sand way of looking at this issue. So are you ready? Are your cultures and values in place? Do we celebrate age work contributions, exit them with dignity? Do we understand our demographics? Have we run the numbers? Do we understand workers' comp and insurance numbers and costs, the additional costs for older workers? Do we pay attention to attracting and retaining the older workforce? Do our practice and policy, procedure and work environment are in place to make that happen? Do we know where the next wave of our workforce is coming from? Are our aging, hiring policy preventing aging or encouraging age discrimination? Do we have processes in place taking account of the aging workforce? Are policy and practices in place and supported by managers and supervisors? Are we looking at the well-being? Do we have succession plans? Do we pay attention to knowledge retention, the board and leadership across the business case? Do we have alternate work arrangements in place, including phased retirement options? These are the kind of things that I guess need to start to be on the agenda of HR and the business in general. So, as I say, we run a program called Changing Gears. We tend to start with a pilot program just to, I guess, highlight a business to what the real issue is, because I mean, there hasn't been that conversation, there hasn't been that dialogue, and if there is a conversation, it's been a guarded conversation. So walking through a program, and this is how we approach it: starting that conversation, open that dialogue in a safe environment, providing baseline information back to the business. We involve super fund advice, we involve Centrelink advice, we gather valuable information about the retirement intentions, highlight issues, focus activities, and start exploring the options with an organisation. So we can start to hold your hand as a third party to re-engage people in the business around a key issue moving forward. And on that note, Mel, that brings us to the end of the official presentation.
Thanks, Peter, and everyone. I hope that was valuable for you. Just a few questions that I thought we could go through, Peter, that some of our participants have asked prior to the session.
Sure.
So there was quite a few questions around keeping employees who are planning retirement in the next 1 to 2 years engaged and motivated, or how to keep those mature workers motivated, you know, prior to their transition.
I think, you know, if someone is looking at that stage and saying, I'm going to retire in a couple of years' time, it's the same way as you would motivate anybody. It's looking at someone and saying, okay, how can we enhance your contribution back into the business? So it's not a matter of, okay, we just need to work them till they walk out the door there. If you're looking at succession planning, if you're looking at knowledge retention, you're looking at any, I guess, productivity, all that information and knowledge that person has, with the right conversation, the right engagement, part of their role can actually start to be transferring and building your succession plan and building your knowledge retention capabilities in the business. So if they are transitioning, have that conversation with them. What does that transition look like? It may be a reduction in hours. It may be sharing with someone else who's leaving. It may be coaching and mentoring people coming through the business. It may be running training plans and things like that, where they now feel like on top of their day-to-day job, they're actually contributing back into the business. And that, in any kind of case where I'm trying to motivate employees, that's where I would start.
That's good. And I think with our case studies of the Changing Gears pilot program that we've run so far, that's certainly some feedback we're receiving from those employees, that they do want to share their knowledge and they want to take up those mentoring roles.
I mean, fear is a major issue in this area. Fear, old people. I mean, even that headline in today's paper, we fear, we're frightened. What happens to us?
Another really interesting question we had was, I'm a senior in my office, and the problem isn't with me yet. It is with my spouse, who has been in hospital for 37 days. This has obviously made an impact on my work. So this person was inquiring about the advice to management or HR on dealing with this type of aging situation. So I'm not sure if that lies around confidence and trust, or, like you said, the fear in you know, being able to approach HR.
Yes, I mean, there will be nothing more, I guess, mentally distressing for someone where they're really torn between family and work. And especially when they feel like those two things are intertwined. So, I mean, the priority needs to be with your family, but I need to work to feed my family. So it's an extremely distressing position to be in. Starting that conversation is really the only place to go with that. So, I mean, I would suggest talking to someone that you do trust in the organisation, and I guess start to table that and work through the intricacies of, you know, how do I start to build that conversation where now I'm feel like I'm in a safe place to express what I'm needing at the moment. I mean, it's a terrible situation to be in, but I mean, and that happens to younger workers as well. I mean, even when my first child was born, he was in intensive care for 6 weeks. So now I'm working full time, and I've got a newborn in the hospital. So having that conversation with my employer, knowing that this was a situation, and, you know, I guess building almost a business case as to why that wasn't going to impact badly on them or me, and find that balance, because there isn't an end to that.
Thanks, Peter. There was also a few queries regarding the organisation's consideration of branding and diversity. Hopefully this is been answered
Yes.
quite broadly in your presentation, but one of the questions was the current government employment packages are directed to youth entering the workforce, but how can mature age workforce overcome the continuing indirect bias in the workplace?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, it is a social, and I certainly read in the that article, and actually, if you employ someone under 29, I think it was a $200 a week or a month bonus. I can't quite remember. But if you employ someone over 30, it reduced to $100. So there's no doubt that, as I say, it's an economic, social issue that everything we read, everything we see, everything we're focusing on in terms of is how do we keep our young people engaged. I guess they tend to be the most vocal when things go wrong. It's the young people that are, I guess, we focus on the most, and we all want the best for the next generation moving through. So it's a real challenge. We've certainly been having this conversation over an extended period of time, and it's your attendance at these kind of sessions for each of you to go away with a little bit more understanding and knowledge and start to raise those questions, because there's no easy answer to that, Mel. It is a big social issue, and the more people start to talk about it, focus on it, come up with solutions for it, then the faster we will come up with a socially acceptable answer.
Thanks, Peter. That seems to be all the questions at the moment. So we might just wrap up there. And just to let you know, if you are interested in our Changing Gears trademark program, please do reach out to us where we can have a chat and how we can tailor it to your specific needs for your organisation.
Everything starts with a conversation now.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks very much for attending. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.